Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and the Texas Veterans Land Board. If you are a veteran here in the great state of Texas and haven't had the opportunity to access the resources that Texas VOB provides, go into your Google search bar, type in Texas VOB, and take a look at the home loans, land loans, home refurbishment loans that are provided to you because of your service. Today I have an extraordinary guest on, Dr. Larry Wallace, the mayor of Manor. And Mayor, I've really enjoyed our conversations over the last several days about everything from military transition to personal and professional development to the responsibilities of running a city, especially in the last 6 months, which have been incredibly dynamic. And so I'm interested to see that through your eyes. Before we get started, can you give us a little background on your military service?
First station over in Hawaii with 556 personnel battalion. To the reserves, went to college at University of Texas Arlington at the same time, went through drill sergeant school, got commissioned through ROTC, redeployed or deployed for my first time as an officer, as a platoon leader out of Europe, redeployed. So back to back 32 months with infantry, 172nd Infantry. And then after I went to the captain's course, was stationed with NATO, where I served as a deputy G2, G3 before taking command of land support, and deactivated my command in the land command during a restructuring down there before I went over to Fort Bragg with the Army Special Operations Aviation Command as their last human resources plans and operations officer before going over to create their Secretary of General Staff position, and then serving as their executive officer and alternate aide-de-camp concurrently, and retired out of there as the Deputy Chief of Staff.
So we had an interesting conversation about the decision-making process that you went through when you came back to Texas. And it was an interesting, I guess, almost point of friction, or two things that were really important to you. Can you tell the audience about the decision-making process when you came home after the service?
Yeah, I think it's like everybody else in transition, right? If you get the job, you're going to go there, right? You have nowhere else really to go. So if you get a job, but no jobs were really creating or establishing, it was always you're the top three, but we have someone that can go right now, meaning they had the industry experience. They didn't want to spend the time to try to teach you that industry. And so then it came down to, do I go back home where I grew up at? And people know me before I left. They know a little bit about my military career, but they don't know the experiences. They don't know the leadership. They don't know the decision-making that I've done. So they're going to have a skewed perception of who I am. And is that going to be stifling to me on what I believe I can do?
Can I ask you what made you aware of that dynamic?
Having gone home before, when my wife got married to me, when
When y'all got married.
yeah, we got married. One of the things that I told her, because I was overseas out of my 20 some odd years, I was overseas over half the time. And so when I came home for that 3 weeks out of the whole year from Hawaii or overseas, you could slowly see that people would want you to come see them, but they live there, right?
Yeah.
And my mom and my dad would always say, such and such is asking about you and how are you doing? I gave him your number, I gave him your email, but I'm not hearing from anybody, right? So it came to me as a thing of, all right, at the end of the day, it's about taking care of either myself or my family, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only allegiance I have outside of when I leave the military is to my immediate family and staying in contact with my mother, my father, and any of my siblings, right? Because evidently everybody else moved on. And so when it came to making that decision, it was, do I go back to people that will not be able to understand where I'm coming from and the decisions I make? because only 20% of the military at any given time have any affiliation or knowledge about what really goes on in the military. And so it was, do I go back home and put myself back into a situation where people don't know who I am now? They knew who I was.
Yeah.
Or do I move into a place where my father was at, where he had more connections and resources and accesses than I did because of his position? So it comes down to, do I go somewhere that doesn't have connections, but is my home? Or do I go somewhere else that's his new place, but I have someone that is going to vouch for me and introduce me to other people? It's still on me to demonstrate the knowledge and the experience I have, but it's more or less, do I put myself in an opportunity, in a situation that opens doors and potential opportunities? We all know this, even in the military. If someone in a green suit or a gray suit or a blue suit messages you and says, hey, I got a friend that wants to talk to you, right? We're all like, I did the introduction, hands off, it's on them how they interact, right? That is not the norm in the civilian world. In the civilian world, it's like, before I associate my name with you, right? Before I burn my credits with you,
You got to
right?
prove something.
Exactly. So you got to put yourself in an environment, even in politics here, getting ready to go into elections. My county commissioner told me, he said, hey, you know, before you give your endorsement to someone, realize when you officially endorse someone, not only do they get your friends, but they also get your enemies.
Mm.
But what's more stronger than verbally endorsing someone is if they see you with them.
Together.
Right? Exactly. So it's kind of the same way.
So so you came here to Central Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the decision was you could go, I think it was Dallas.
Yeah.
Come here to Central Texas, and you came here to be with your dad and develop some of those professional ties. But I think for any veteran, if they think that they're going to get out and they're going to go to, say, a city that has a lot of opportunity, that opportunity still has to be sown. It still has to be watered. It still has to be nurtured. It doesn't just show up at your doorstep, even if you do have relationships with people. So let's just say, how did you approach developing those relationships that were already in place so that they actually produce fruit for you?
So this is the interesting thing here, right? So probably the first 3 or 4 months, my dad coordinated his list of people he wanted me to meet. And I went and did coffee with them. They all drilled me. I asked my dad to sit down with me so he could also learn how I've changed, right? And I'll be honest with you.
Can I
Like my
stop you? Can I stop
Go
you
ahead.
real quick then? Because I think the coffee thing is really important for professional networking. So
Mm-hmm.
you maybe walk us through, if you're a veteran at home and you go, man, I have a coffee with somebody, I'm just going to show up and I'm just going to chat with them for 30 minutes. What did you do strategically, mentally, the way that you dressed? How did you prepare for that coffee to actually make it a successful coffee, as opposed to just saying, well, I'm just going to go talk with this person?
So even when I'm dealing with my father, I'm always operating in a professional capacity. I'm
Say
never
that
in
one more
emails
time.
with
It broke up a little bit.
okay.
Say that one more time about your approach to the having coffee.
So an example would be, even when I'm engaging with my own father, I always operate in a professional manner. Whenever I send an email or he sends an email that has a third party on it, we always are saying, sir, Mr. whatever. So you never let your guard down, because you never know when you're being assessed.
Right.
And so even when I'm presenting something to a family member, to a non-family member, or someone that connected me, you're working off of their credit, right? They're getting you in the door. Their value either increases or decreases based on how you engage. The
Mm.
same way as you would go in and try to be the aide de camp, the driver for the sergeant major, trying to become a commander or a platoon sergeant, right, or a platoon leader. It's the same thing here. Even though you may not get selected, how you bring your professional resume in, how you introduce yourself, how you pay for the bill, even though you may not have the money, how you say the yes sir, yes ma'am, how you do all that etiquette even though you may not get the job, you're building credit for yourself, because we all know that if you're supposed to sell your own juice, you're supposed to brand yourself.
Yeah.
But if
you got to be your promoter. You got to be your best promoter. Nobody's going to promote you like you can promote you.
True, but also there's another side of the coin here. You're supposed to sell yourself to me. I'm not going to take that for face value, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if I have 4 or 5 of my close friends come to me and they all gave me your resume and they all said the same thing about you, that builds credibility.
Right.
And that's what you're really trying to do, is you're trying to swarm around, build this coalition of people that are advocating for you, people that are highly recommending you, and building this big old strong network of people saying, man, I love the way that person engages. They're professional. They came, they're smart. They brought all their paperwork. And even though they emailed it to me, even though I told them I already had it, they still brought it. You're signaling who you are.
Yeah, and so I think that's the interesting part about, if you tell a military veteran who's been in the service, you know, hey, the value of building these relationships is that you expand your 2 or 3 degrees of connection. So people know your name, they know your background, and like you said, they trust almost even the persona that you have. And so through these coffees that you were having after you got back, you were able to either land a job or maybe just kind of learn the landscape here in Central Texas and in Austin?
Yeah, I mean, nothing was overnight. Even with my county commissioner, it took me almost 8 months before he even really opened the door of access to him. And we're both fraternity brothers. We're both minorities. He calls my dad all the time. But even now, my dad's like, I've never even been to his house. You've been to his house. So it's knowing that you're playing the long ball game. The rabbit and the tortoise in the hare.
In the hare, yeah.
Right? You may have to have 2 or 3 different engagements. You have to be able to put yourself in the room, in the environments where you're going to keep seeing them, because we all know this, even in the military, right? That if you're the senior boss and you keep seeing that person in the room, sooner or later, like, man, I keep seeing you. Who are you?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, I may never know your name, but I know your face. And then sooner or later, I know your name. It is sooner or later, because I know your name and I know your face, I want to know who you are, right? And it's like that in the civilian world.
Did you feel like you knew that going into it, or was that something you learned through this process?
I think it was something that I innately knew because of military experience and having served and supported in so many different environments within the military, different echelons. I think it was something that I innately knew. But as I tried to mentor my junior soldiers, some of it became more prominent. But I think like I said before, I think as me and my old boss were writing this book and really thinking through it, that's when a lot of it really became more of a known reality.
So the military service career path is very mapped out. Mm. So after you did the coffees, you made the connection, and you began working, now the career trajectory for you is different than the trajectory of somebody who maybe is an E5 or an 04, where they can kind of like, plot the dots and see where they're going to end up. Can you talk about the difference between career trajectory on the professional side outside of a military setting, in the civilian side, and in the challenges that veterans may face trying to pursue that trajectory?
Right. I would say, one, at least with your statement right there, that my trajectory outside of military is probably the same as E4, E5. There's really no difference. I think where the variations happen, where you see some of the successes, are individuals that have that unique career. They're in healthcare. They're a police person, an MP. They're an aviator, right? They have these kind of specialty fields where they have unique training and experience that automatically puts them in a unique opportunity to be hired, right? Now, when you're talking about us that are more like human resources and finance and stuff like that, right? It becomes a little more difficult because we don't learn the state laws. When I came out, I'm supposed to be a senior human resource manager, but I don't know the local state hiring practices, EEOC and all that stuff, right? So I can't lead at that level. But then I'm too senior to start off at entry level because my experience in managing and leading is too high for that. So you're like, man, I can't even do human resources.
Did you feel like your trajectory almost took a step back or two? Because I would say that was my experience where I realized I had to humble myself to realize
Hmm.
that in order to build up that personal credit, like you talked about, I might have to do some stuff that I think I'm better than doing. But
Yeah,
over time, I can succeed past my peers if I
right.
continue on that trajectory.
I think in what you're saying right there is a lot of people say humble, some say lower your expectations.
Yeah.
To me, I think those are terms and phrases that are misused. That, what you say and how you define it is critical in having someone fully understand it, right? The same way as when you go to the promotion board and you keep saying your reflection is negative on the unit and your leadership. Well, if I don't care about the unit and the leadership like that, then I don't care how I go into that promotion board. But if I say you're making yourself look embarrassed, you're making yourself look bad, and that's going to have ramifications in you moving up, that may entice me to do the same exact thing you were trying to get me to do with the other language. And so the sense here is more of you need to create your own civilian professional timeline, just like the military created a professional military one for you. In order to do that, where would you like to go? What positions would you like to be in? Now go out on LinkedIn and all your other social media platforms, find people in those spaces that are both military and non-military, and sit down and have those coffees. Identify what things need to occur. What are prerequisite positions, prerequisite education, training that needs to occur, and start building that civilian timeline, right? And also having those coffees and sitting down and talking to them, because they're going to be the ones that can tell you before you try to translate something and then you go on an interview and they say, well, why did you pick that definition? Well, Google told me it was a good definition. That's why I picked it, right? No, you got to be able to say, I picked it because based on talking with this person in this field and that person, whatnot, they told me it best fits this way. And I kind of agreed when they explained it to me. The same way as you are vouching to get promoted because you went through this reconnaissance school, because you got your EIB, because you got promoted high, you have to build that confidence in why you want to go on to a particular entry, why you would be looking for a particular job, a particular salary, but you have to do more work to create that understanding. And that understanding may tell you and say, hey, you don't know if you want to be that director or you want to be that whatever it is, you don't know finances, profit and losses like you should. And that means you may have to take a step down so you can learn that aspect of the job. And now you understand why you're not starting out at the level you're at, because there are some actual holes in your knowledge and expertise area, not your leadership and management area, but your knowledge and expertise area. Because in the military, even commanding, you can go to your 6 shop, you can go to your 3 shop, you can go to your 4 shop, you can go to all those shops and say, I don't get it, create it so I understand it. And they're going to do that. You
Yeah.
can't do that in the civilian world, because that funds guy is going to say, you're my boss? And you right?
How'd you
So
get here? Yeah. So tell us then about, you've kind of laid the groundwork of the people that you were meeting, the approach that you took to coffees, and even kind of a knowledge that, hey, now that I'm on this side of the uniform, I may have to take a different trajectory to my career, or at least rework it a little bit. So what was the first job that you had, and then how did you end up in working in public service?
So I did a lot of volunteering, build up experience in knowledge, credentials, and credibility outside the military. And then also knowing that the first job you take outside the military signals what your military service was worth, right? Because when you go for that second job, right, what are you going to be using? That first job.
Yeah.
Knowing
It's
those
building
things.
blocks. You're building that capital. You're right. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So I did a lot of volunteering. I sat as a board member for a youth mental health organization. Knew nothing about it, honestly. And I told them, I don't know anything about this. I think it's an area of interest. I got connections in the healthcare space because of my father. So I can cheat a little bit in getting knowledge and asking questions. I can bring that value, but really I need to start somewhere. I need to start gaining knowledge. So I did that. There was a position at University of Texas system that I really wanted. They weren't hiring because of their hire freeze that year. So I went to Major General Tony Kukolo and said, "Hey, I'm willing to volunteer." And he's like, "Okay, cool. I could use the help, but I don't want to waste your time. So one day a week." I said, "No, I'll be here 5 days a week." So,
So you
so
off, yeah, yeah. That's about
you
kicking
know,
the door in right there and telling somebody, hey, I have value. This is what I can bring to the table. Let me help you.
So for the first 8 months, I did it unpaid. But the credibility I bought from that, because now all the connections I have, half of the connections I have, came from that job as the lead veterans person for the University of Texas system. And the value the people had in me to be able to say the passion he has when he's getting in your butt and things, dude ain't getting paid either.
Yeah.
So he's got it's got to be real. You know what I'm saying? It's got to be legit.
He really cares about this job.
Exactly, right? So those are relationships that have been carried on because it wasn't about, oh, I really want to do this, but if you're not going to pay me, then I'm not going to do it, right? It's a double standard right there, what you're saying. And then, uh, from there, just branching into more things because more people wanted me to be involved. They wanted me to be at the table because not only did they see that I had demonstrated areas of passion and that it wasn't always about money, right? That they almost wanted to make sure I got mine. And they wanted to bring me in on things because I also was demonstrating a certain level of knowledge and expertise and leadership that was natural from the military. But again, it wasn't a thing of, oh, I want to go do this and I want to go do that. It was more of a thing of what's out there. Let me put my name in a hat. Let me tell them I'm willing to try it. I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to take the pay cut because that position or that opportunity or that experience is going to be crucial down the road. And as I kind of started looking into politics, more so of this new environment, I have no clue what's going on in it. I knew the military by reading the policies, regulations, and directives. So you had a base understanding of how all the military armed forces work, how the Army in itself worked. So then the only thing I needed to do when I went to a new unit is read those policies to figure out how to operate and not get in trouble there before I started making my own independent decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But when you come to the civilian world, you're like, whoa, I don't know what to do. I don't know where
I
to
don't know
go.
what the baseline is here. I don't know what the norms are.
Exactly. So my mentors, which were the same people that I had met the year prior, were basically saying, if you really want to get to know the ins and outs, Planning and Zoning Commission. So I filed my name. I got on there. And then elections came up for council. Went ahead and threw my name in a hat because they told me I didn't have to give up my position on planning and zoning. So I went ahead and did that. And then basically for mayor, our mayor termed out. So it was an open seat. Based upon where the city of Manor needs to go and is going, it was really more of, all right, I've been doing a lot of things behind the scenes, and there's certain things that still need to continue to go. Let me go ahead and throw my name in a hat, even though I had to step down off of council, but I can't look at the new person going in and saying you're doing it wrong if I don't at least put my name out there to get selected. I can't have that double standard of wanting to try to be safe, but then at the same time try to tell someone else how to lead. And most of what I've been doing in politics, whether it's education, whether it's health talking, whether it's community stuff, honestly, is all from the experiences I got before I got in office with trying to find where I fit in.
Can I ask you how much either it's your professional experiences or your personality from your service with HR, how that has helped you navigate political landscapes or governance and public service?
Um, I would probably say 75-20. 75-20 experience,
Okay.
25%. Man, I love the guy. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was. That's I always like talking to our guests about that. Like, how much of this is just like, live versus learned, or nature versus nurture. How much
Yeah,
do you learn through the
yeah.
HR processes in the military, or how much of it is just like, hey, I'm Larry Wallace. This is who I am as a person, and now I
Hmm.
compare my personality
Yeah.
with my professional experience, and this is what's going to get me over the hump. Because without one or the other, I may not be the candidate that I need to be or the mayor that I need to be.
Yeah.
Have to put these two. And sometimes I would guess, and I'll let you reply to this, that you have to rely on one of those sometimes more than the other, depending on the situation.
Definitely. But I will say this, at the end of the day, it's 75% experience and knowledge and professionalism. 25%, I love the guy. And this is why, because someone did ask me that early on. And they're like, man, everybody loves you. You're doing a great job. And I said, yeah, but I haven't really done anything. I just led. I've been more transparent. I've been out more, engaging, dialoguing. And so that changed the climate. We already know about that. Leadership can change the climate and the culture. I did that. That's great. But when I leave and a new person comes in and it changes the climate and the culture, did I really do anything?
Hmm.
And that's what you're talking about is I can love the person all night long, but if you ain't doing nothing, then you're not beneficial.
You have to leave a structural impact.
Exactly. I'd rather have someone that I know is going to impact things, Lean Six Sigma, waste management, improvement, whatever, right? Because at the end of the day, when it comes to getting hired or fired, did you make me money?
Mm-hmm.
And make me money in, did you actually save me dollars, create me dollars, or save me labor hours, which equates to dollars, right? I can love you all day long, but if you ain't
Time
helping
is
me.
money.
Exactly. So here's a good example of when you're talking about the 75% versus the other 25%, right? And people would reach out to me using the veteran card when I was at the University of Texas system as their director of veteran support and leadership programs. And they would want to talk to me about finances or some type of product. And they would sit down and want to get to know me and tell me their background and their history for the first 20 minutes of our session. And I'm like, look, at my level, I don't really care who you are. Because when I shoot the email out, people, whether intentionally or not, are going to start making moves. It's
Mm-hmm.
like the general shooting the email out saying, hey, can you look into this? It's going to get up the deputy chief. It's going to get the sergeant major. It's going to get the, right? So give me the product. Tell me how that product is better than all the other products I have. Give me the information so I can shoot that out and say, because that's what the team's going to look at. They're not going to care whether I like you or not. And a lot of times people want to woo you as if you're going to Sam's or if you're going into the Walmarts where they're trying to woo you with the direct TV sales. I don't care about you, bro. You may
Yeah.
quit the job tomorrow. I'm still stuck with the contract. And I got suckered because, I got
Because I
suckered
liked you.
because I liked you.
So, Mayor, we've got to talk a lot about your experiences leading up to city council, your transition out of the military, and I think it looks like you have a guest with you this time. Tell us about the city and kind of what you're excited about going forward.
The city of Manor, American elected as mayor following our first Hispanic female as mayor. And so Manor is like a mom and pop business that's having to learn to be a family-owned business while being demanded like a mid-sized city overnight.
Hmm.
And so it's the seventh fastest growing suburb in the nation, per literature.com, 2018. 20th best small suburbs to live in per best news in World Report 2019, and one of the fastest growing cities in Texas per the 2020 Texas Demographic Center. So that's really what, I guess, for me as mayor, that's what I'm dealing with. And I say dealing in a positive sense of impacting change for this city where happens is going to have ramifications of how it is seen and how it grows in the livelihood of its population, probably for maybe the rest of the city of Manor. And then the Eastern Crescent out here for Travis County, Manor is right smack in the middle. So all the conversations with county departments and officials, how Manor grows will have a significant impact on how the Eastern Crescent grows. And then as the key minority mayor, the only black mayor within Travis County, having that obligation to be a powerful, active voice for the underserved, underrepresented, and low income populations, even though that also includes some Caucasians and other populations, but to have that voice because nationally, that underserved, underrepresented, and low income population are people of Black and brown color.
Yeah, and I'm interested to know the experiences and the challenges and some of the burdens that you faced as a leader over the last 4 months with the shuttering of small businesses, loss of jobs due to COVID, and the killing of George Floyd and the ramifications that has had for not just our cities but our nation as a whole. And I know that might be a lot to digest, but as mayor, you are really in the front seat for these issues, and you're extremely close to the people. So I'm interested to know, as a leader, how you've approached that, and maybe what you've learned about your town over the last really dynamic and at times difficult 4 months that we've had.
I have all different types of populations, walks of life, genders, sexual orientations, whatever it may be, jobs and so forth. No one is better than the other, but at the same time, some have more priority or focus based on the
Mhm.
current environment and situation or circumstances. So having to really be able to highlight one, but make sure you're not negating the needs and the wants and asks of another. So everyone feels as if they're being properly represented by this senior chief executive leader that speaks for the whole city. As far as the George Floyd situation and incident, um, it's really highlighting the turning point that regardless of this man's background, we can talk about that in a second, but regardless of the man's background, we're talking about an individual that did not receive any form of escalation of force executed, regardless of his color, regardless of all that, did not receive escalation of force, um, and was murdered. Now you add in the fact that he was a person that happened to be minority. And then you also then add in that this cop previously knew George Floyd. So he knew his previous background. And so does it come to a sense that because I know someone's background and I don't agree with their background, then I don't have to follow the laws and the policies that are in place for that particular instance where there was no reason to do that? And then fourthly, then are we saying that a person that has a tainted background should receive less justice than someone that doesn't have such a tainted background? But in all the movies we watch, if you're a religious person, the holy writs we read is usually the person that has that tainted background that
Yeah.
usually is the one that messages that if that person can't receive justice, if that person can't turn around, if that person can't make things positive and impactful, then what in the world can the rest of us do?
Yeah. So how do you feel then? I mean, when you look into your communities and you live in an incredibly diverse community, and as a leader, as an African American man, what gives you optimism for the future of your city and that the difficulties that we are seeing now? How do you see Manor being a part of that, the solution?
We have, once again, the demographic population that we have, I think it's key in showing that even though we may not have some of those issues or some of those trends, especially with the new police force that we have, especially with the new leadership within City Hall and the council that we have, that we are still using our voice to be able to say, just because we don't have that going on here, we still have an obligation to make sure it never happens or doesn't happen by reviewing and building upon the foxhole we already have.
Yeah. And I'm interested too to go back to the impacts that small businesses face
Mhm.
because of COVID. Are you seeing a return in your city? Are people starting to feel more confident coming out? And what's been kind of the message between small business owners and customers there?
The interesting piece is recently having talked with the CEO of Community Care and looking at their dashboard on testing. Manor from tests is currently at about 11%, whereas Elgin and Austin is at 24 to 30% on being positive. So I'm hoping that the reason our numbers are lower is because of the more proactive communication, the more proactive uh, explanation of what's going on and what that means specifically for here in our city. Just like anything else, right? You know your leaders, and so you usually trust them more than you trust the other echelons.
The people
Even
who are
though
closer to you is what you're saying. You get to have
exactly,
a personal
exactly.
relationship.
Plus, the messages coming from higher are usually more cover a larger area of responsibility.
More
So
macro, yeah.
exactly. So you can pretty much be like, hey, I get it, but what does that mean for us right here? So
Well, before we begin to close this out, I know that there's a co-host sitting on your lap there, and he's trying to answer a couple questions. Who's joining us today?
this is Levi. He's the youngest of three. Getting ready to turn 2 in a couple of months, and yeah, he just woke up. He's cranky, as usual, like everybody else right now, right?
Yeah, a little cranky.
Trying to do
I'm cranky
business.
like when I get up in the morning too. So I know that doesn't change, young man.
Yep, yep. So that's like everybody is right now. They're trying to do their meetings and phone calls, and the kids are jumping in the way and whatnot. So
Well, we love having Levi in the show, and it is so fun during these interviews just to see what's going to happen. And obviously, it's an incredible conversation talking with you, Mayor. Before we go, I'd like to allow you the last word. Is there a message that you'd like to leave us with today?
basically, what I would probably want to leave with anybody would honestly be saying that when you are looking at what your next career is going to be past the military, and you're looking at everybody that may be quote unquote what you consider to be successful, right? Really asking the person, what did they go through? How did they get there? 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you the good stuff. They're not going to want to tell you the hard stuff. And it's the hard stuff that you really need to ask. It's the hard stuff you need to come to understand so you can mentally prepare yourself for the long haul. Because we always see success stories. Amazon didn't start overnight. Walmart didn't start overnight. Nobody ever started overnight. But that's all we really hear. We don't hear the background and what it took to get through, so we can be mentally prepared for the long haul. And knowing that we may have to also go into financial debt, knowing that sooner or later it will come, but how do we set ourselves up to not be jeopardizing our families when we could have prepared a whole lot better?
Absolutely. Well, Mayor, I appreciate you being with us today, and also bringing on your young son Levi to make
Yep.
starring appearance today. And appreciate you sharing your background with us, your story, and you are really at an interesting point in American history, and excited and just really appreciative of the legacy that you have already left an impact Central Texas. And on this show, we get to talk, to leaders who have continued to serve after the military, and you are a great example of that. So thanks for coming on and sharing your story with us today.
No, I appreciate you reaching out. Thank you.
Absolutely. On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush and the Texas Veterans Land Board, my name is Dan Hamilton. Mayor and Levi, thank you guys for joining us. And for everybody at home, we'll talk to you next time.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior podcast.